All right, let's jump right in. If you dig into the book of Jeremiah, you find this really wild section. It's not just the prophet speaking to his own people, Judah. No, he's delivering these powerful, divine messages straight to the global superpowers of his day. We're talking Egypt, Babylon, the heavy hitters. So that just begs the question, right? Why? Why would a prophet from this small kingdom of Israel be delivering messages to the world's most powerful empires? I mean, was he on some kind of ancient world tour? Was he a diplomat? Well, the answer, it actually tells us a ton about how the ancient world viewed God and power and justice. Okay, and before we go any further, let's get one term straight. When we talk about an oracle here, what do we mean? It's really simple. It's just a divine message, a prophecy that's delivered by a prophet. You can almost think of it like a press release straight from the heavens. You see, Jeremiah's role was different. He wasn't just any old prophet. From the very beginning, his commission from God was to be a prophet to the nations. This wasn't just some side project for him, it was woven into the very fabric of his mission. But here's something you gotta understand, and it's a common misconception. Jeremiah wasn't hopping on a camel and doing a world tour of foreign courts. Nope. For the most part, he was delivering these messages in Judah, for the people of Judah to hear. They were the main audience. So what exactly were they supposed to be learning from all this? Well, the first big takeaway was a radical idea for its time: God's universal sovereignty. I mean, think about it. Back then, every nation had its own local gods who were kind of stuck within their own borders. Jeremiah's message? It completely shatters that idea. The God of Israel isn't some tribal deity. He's the king of everything, the whole world. And get this specific message, it was aimed squarely at Egypt, a global superpower. But listen to how God speaks here. He calls himself the king. That's a direct challenge, right? His authority isn't limited by borders or rivers. He's in charge, whether you're standing in Jerusalem or in the Pharaoh's court in Memphis. And this authority really had no off switch, no geographical limits. The oracles even call out a kingdom named Elam. Now, Elam was hundreds of miles east of Babylon. For someone living in Judah, that was basically the edge of the known world. And yet, even there, it was still God's territory. I mean, just listen to this declaration. It's just stunning in its claim to absolute power. It's a statement that says, hey, it doesn't matter how far away you think you are. No nation, no king is beyond my reach. Okay, so if the first big message was about God's total authority, the second was aimed directly at Israel itself. These oracles were doing double duty, They were both a message of encouragement and a really sharp warning about the political games they were playing. And that's the crucial thing to get here, this dual message. On one hand, it was this incredible promise of hope. It was God saying, look, the empires that are crushing you, they will face justice. I will rescue you. But on the other hand, it was a major warning. Stop putting your trust in alliances with these other nations because they're already under my judgment. There's this amazing metaphor from another prophet, Zechariah, that just perfectly captures the idea behind Jeremiah's messages. It says that anyone who harms Israel is like someone poking God in the apple of his eye. Ouch! It's such a visceral image, right? It means a response isn't just likely, it's guaranteed. And this wasn't just, some abstract theological discussion. This was life or death political advice. Judah's last king, a guy named Zedekiah, was in a total panic. He was desperately trying to make an alliance with Egypt to save them from the Babylonian war machine. It was his last-ditch effort, his only hope. But Jeremiah's oracles expose the fatal flaw in that entire plan. Think about it. How can a nation save you when that nation is also under divine judgment? Egypt was facing its own reckoning. They couldn't even save themselves, let alone ride in like the cavalry to save Judah. It was just a hopeless strategy. And that brings us to our final and maybe the most universal reason for these oracles. And it's this: God holds all nations, everywhere, accountable to a moral standard. He judges them for two things in particular: their pride and their violence. Now, the legal basis for this is really fascinating. You see, Israel was held accountable to its own specific set of laws, the Mosaic Covenant. But God judged the other nations by a different standard, a more ancient and universal one, the Noahic Covenant. Remember that? The one God made with Noah and all of humanity right after the flood? And at the absolute core of this universal standard, this basic rule for humanity, was a clear prohibition against unchecked violence and the shedding of innocent blood. God holds every nation, then and now, accountable for that. You could call it the original international law.
But, even more than violence, there is one sin that gets called out again and again and again in these oracles, and that's hubris. We're talking about a defiant, arrogant national pride that just refuses to admit there's any authority higher than itself.
Take Egypt, for instance. It's portrayed as speaking with the voice of its own god, the Nile River, and boasting that it's going to rise up and just swallow the whole world. It's this incredible picture of imperial arrogance, right? Believing your own power is ultimate and absolute. And it wasn't just the big guys, the superpowers. Even a smaller nation like Moab gets called out for its own brand of pride. Theirs wasn't about conquering the world, it was about trusting in their own economy, their own works and treasures, instead of acknowledging a higher power. So what in the world does all this ancient history have to do with us today? This is where we get to the big takeaway, and honestly, it might not be what you're expecting. A lot of people read these prophecies and they immediately ask, wait, are these oracles secretly about our world? Are they predicting modern events? Well, the text itself is actually really clear about this. And the answer is no. These were very specific prophecies about specific historical judgments that were carried out in Jeremiah's own time, mostly by Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian army. They aren't a secret code or a roadmap for the 21st century. But, and this is the absolute key, while the specific events are in the past, they reveal a timeless pattern. These ancient nations become a kind of paradigm, a model that shows us how God deals with nations and empires throughout all of history. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. These oracles aren't about predicting the future, but they do teach us about the principles that shape the future. So here's the question. If defiant national pride and ignoring injustice were the very things that brought down ancient empires, what should modern nations be thinking about today?